Florist rejects rich CEO, not knowing that his grandmother left her the flower shop. Before we begin the story, you can help us a lot by subscribing to our channel and sharing this video. Excuse me? Are you even listening to me? Julian Davenport's voice cut through the warm afternoon air of the flower shop like a blade, his Italian leather shoes clicking impatiently against the worn wooden floors. Behind the counter, Clara Monroe didn't even glance up from the delicate white roses she was arranging, her skilled fingers working with precision of a surgeon. "I heard you perfectly, Mr." She paused, finally looking up with raised eyebrows. "You can call me Jay," he said, avoiding his identity. "Right, Mr. Jay." Clara's tone suggested the name meant absolutely nothing to her. "You need 12 centerpieces for tonight's corporate event. White flowers only, nothing too fancy. Delivery by 6 p.m. She returned to her roses. "My answer is no." Julian blinked. In his 32 years on this planet, no one had ever simply said no to him. "I'm sorry, what?" "I said no." Clara's voice remained maddeningly calm. "What you're describing isn't floral arrangement, it's mass production. Each arrangement I create is a unique piece of art. That takes time." "Time I don't have," Julian snapped, pulling out his platinum credit card like a weapon. "I'll pay double, triple if necessary." Clara finally stopped working, setting down her shears with deliberate precision. When she looked at him this time, her dark eyes held a spark of something between amusement and pity. "Let me guess. You think everything has a price tag, don't you?" "Everything does." "No, Mr. Davenport, everything doesn't." She gestured to the shop around them, filled with explosions of color and life. "Beauty takes time to cultivate. Art can't be rushed. And my integrity definitely isn't for sale." Julian's jaw tightened. He was Julian Davenport, CEO of Nexus Dynamics, worth more than most small countries' GDP. He closed billion-dollar deals before breakfast and had senators on speed dial. Yet here was this woman in a paint-stained apron, surrounded by daisies and baby's breath, dismissing him like he was nothing more than an inconvenience. "Do you have any idea who I am?" he demanded. "Should I?" Clara asked, genuinely curious. "Are you famous for something other than being rude to florists?" The construction worker behind Julian snorted with laughter. "Lady's got a point, buddy." Julian whirled around, noticing for the first time that a small line had formed behind him while he'd been arguing. An elderly woman with a knowing smile, 2 young women whispering to each other, and the construction worker all watched the exchange with obvious entertainment. "Actually," Clara continued, moving past Julian to address the construction worker, "what can I help you with, Miguel?" "The usual bouquet for my Rosa, beautiful, and don't worry about Prince Charming here. Rich boys are all the same." Clara's laugh was like music, warm and genuine in a way that made Julian's chest tighten unexpectedly. "Don't worry, Miguel, I've dealt with worse." Julian stood frozen, watching Clara transform before his eyes as she chatted with Miguel in rapid Spanish, her entire demeanor softening into something radiant and welcoming. For everyone except him. "Sir, your 3 o'clock meeting with the board is in... Cancel it." Julian didn't look up from his laptop screen as he sat in the back of his Tesla, scrolling through the same email for the 5th time without absorbing a single word. His assistant Margaret blinked. "Sir, it's the quarterly review. You've been preparing for this meeting for weeks." "I said cancel it, Margaret." "But sir, the Japanese investors are flying in specifically for..." "Then reschedule," Julian snapped, immediately regretting his tone. Margaret had worked for him for 6 years and had never seen him this scattered. "I'm sorry, just handle it, please." Through the tinted window, Julian watched the familiar streets of downtown Chicago blur past. He should be thinking about profit margins in market expansion, not about dark eyes that had looked at him like he was nothing more than an annoying interruption to her day. "James," he called to his driver, "take the scenic route back to the office." "Which scenic route would you prefer, Mr. Davenport?" Julian hesitated. There was only one route he really wanted to take, though he couldn't quite admit it to himself yet. "Through the Arts District. I want to observe the local business climate." 15 minutes later, the Tesla slowed to a crawl as they passed Bloom and Quill. Through the large front window, Julian could see Clara working, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, completely absorbed in whatever creation was taking shape under her hands. "Should I stop, sir?" James asked, noticing his employer's intense focus on the flower shop. "No, keep going." But even as they drove past, Julian found himself craning his neck to catch one more glimpse. The next morning, Julian stood outside Bloom and Quill at exactly 9 a.m. when the small brass sign indicated they opened. He'd rehearsed this conversation in his head a dozen times during a sleepless night. The door chimed as he entered, and Clara looked up from arranging daffodils in a window display. "You've got to be kidding me." "I know what you're thinking. That you're either incredibly persistent or completely dense." Clara straightened, wiping her hands on her apron. "Because honestly, it could go either way." Julian almost smiled. Almost. "I wanted to apologize for yesterday. I was having a difficult day." "And I'm supposed to care about your difficult day because?" "Because you're right. The admission came out rougher than he intended. I do think everything has a price tag. But maybe I was wrong about that." Clara studied him for a long moment, her head tilted slightly. "Are you feeling all right? You look a little pale." "I'm fine. Julian ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so uncharacteristically uncertain that it caught Clara's attention. "I've never met anyone who wasn't impressed by money." "Congratulations. Now you have." She turned back to her daffodils. "Was there something you actually needed, or are you just here to have an existential crisis in my flower shop?" Despite everything, Julian found himself genuinely smiling for the first time in weeks. "Actually, I was hoping you could teach me about flowers." Clara's hand stilled. "Teach you about flowers?" "Yes. You, Mr. Everything has a price tag, wants to learn about flowers?" "Apparently." She turned around slowly, eyeing him with suspicion. "Why?" Julian met her gaze steadily. "Because maybe it's time I learned to see beauty that can't be bought."
"All right, Jay." Clara emphasized the quotation marks with her fingers, clearly still skeptical. "If you're serious about learning, then you start with the basics. What do you see when you look at this?" She held up a single white tulip, its petals closed tight like a secret waiting to be revealed. Julian squinted at the flower as if it were a particularly challenging spreadsheet. "I see a tulip?" "Wrong." Clara's voice held the patience of a teacher addressing a particularly slow student. "You see potential. This tulip is still sleeping. Give it warmth, give it time, and it will open into something completely different. That's the first lesson. Everything beautiful requires patience." "I'm not exactly known for my patience." "I've noticed." She moved to a bucket of mixed stems, selecting each one with the precision of a conductor choosing musicians for an orchestra. "Tell me, Jay, what do you do for work that makes patience such a foreign concept?" Julian hesitated. The lies came so easily in boardrooms, but something about Clara's directness made deception feel heavier. "I'm a project manager? For a tech company." "Which company?" You wouldn't know it. It's relatively small. Clara raised an eyebrow but didn't press. Instead, she handed him a spray of baby's breath. Feel that. Feel what? The texture, the weight. Close your eyes and really feel it. Julian felt ridiculous, but he closed his eyes anyway. Under Clara's guidance, he found himself noticing things he'd never paid attention to before. The delicate structure of each tiny bloom, the way the stems bent without breaking. Good. Now smell these. She placed a bundle of eucalyptus in his other hand. The scent hit him immediately, sharp and clean, and somehow familiar. My grandmother had eucalyptus in her garden. Tell me about her. The words came out before Julian could stop them. She was the only person who ever had time for me. My parents were always traveling, always working, but Grandma Eleanor would spend hours teaching me about her plants. She said they were better listeners than most people. Clara's expression softened. She sounds wonderful. What happened to her garden? She died when I was 22. My parents sold the house immediately after the funeral, said maintaining a garden wasn't cost-effective. The bitterness in his voice surprised him. For the first time since he'd met her, Clara looked at him without suspicion. I'm sorry. That must have been hard. It was a long time ago. Julian opened his eyes, uncomfortable with the vulnerability he'd just exposed. Loss doesn't follow timelines, Jay. Some wounds stay fresh no matter how many years pass. Clara began arranging the stems he'd been holding into a simple but elegant bouquet. Your grandmother would have liked this shop. How do you know? Because it's the kind of place where plants are treated like family, not inventory, where beauty matters more than profit margins. She secured the arrangement with twine and handed it to him. Here, your first lesson is complete. Julian stared at the bouquet, surprised by how accomplished such a simple task made him feel. What's my second lesson? Clara smiled, the first genuine smile she'd given him. Come back tomorrow and find out.
Mr. Davenport, the Wellington acquisition documents need your signature by noon, and the board is still waiting for... Not now, Margaret. Julian dismissed his assistant without looking up from his computer screen, where he was researching the difference between peonies and roses, for research purposes. Definitely not because Clara had mentioned them yesterday. Sir, I really think you should review the Lakefield property portfolio. It's that mixed-use development project you've been championing for months. Julian's fingers froze over the keyboard. Lakefield, the historic arts district, where a certain flower shop happened to be located. Which properties are we acquiring? The entire 400 block of Maple Street, residential and commercial. The legal team says there's only one holdout left, some small flower shop that's refusing to sell. Bloom something. The owner is apparently being difficult about the fair market offer. Julian's stomach dropped. What's the timeline on this? Construction is scheduled to begin in 6 weeks. The new Nexus Tower will be the centerpiece of the development. Sir, this is your pet project. You've been planning this for over a year. Julian stared at the architectural renderings on his screen. The sleek 40-story glass tower that would bear his company's name, surrounded by upscale condos and chain restaurants. Not a single flower shop in sight. Sir, shall I schedule the final acquisition meeting with the holdout property owner? No. Julian's voice came out sharper than intended. I'll handle that personally. An hour later, Julian stood outside Bloom & Quill with a coffee in each hand, watching Clara through the window as she helped an elderly customer select roses. The way she listened intently, nodding at something the woman said, made his chest tight with an emotion he couldn't name. The door chimed as he entered. Good morning, Clara. She looked up, and for the first time her face brightened when she saw him. Jay, you're early today. And you brought coffee. I thought maybe you could use a break. He handed her one of the cups. You look tired. Thanks for the subtle compliment, but Clara accepted the coffee gratefully. I was here until midnight working on arrangements for the Morrison wedding. 300 white roses don't arrange themselves. Julian watched her take a sip, noting the dark circles under her eyes. Do you ever take time off? Time off is a luxury small business owners can't afford. Plus, this place is more than just a business to me. It's what? Clara hesitated, then gestured around the shop. My mentor, Eleanor, she started this place 40 years ago, taught me everything I know about flowers, about running a business, about believing in something bigger than yourself. Julian nearly dropped his coffee. Eleanor? Eleanor Davenport? Did you know her? Clara's eyes lit up with curiosity. She was this amazing woman who believed flowers could heal hearts. She used to say that every arrangement told a story. Julian's heart hammered against his ribs. His grandmother. Clara's mentor was his grandmother. Jay, you look like you've seen a ghost. What happened to her? She got sick about 10 years ago. Cancer. But even when she was in the hospital, she'd have me bring her flowers from the shop. Said they reminded her that beautiful things could still exist in dark times. Clara's voice grew soft with memory. She left this place to me when she died. Said I was the only one who understood that flowers weren't just products, they were promises. Julian set down his coffee with shaking hands. Eleanor had left the shop to Clara. His grandmother had chosen Clara as his legacy, not him. Are you okay? You look pale. I'm fine. Tell me more about her.
She used to tell me that every flower arrangement was like a conversation, Clara continued, carefully trimming the stems of a fresh delivery of lilies. The person arranging them was speaking to the person who would receive them, and the flowers were the language. Julian watched her work, his grandmother's voice echoing in his memory. Flowers don't lie, Julian. They're honest in a way people rarely are. She sounds like she was very wise. She was everything to me after my parents died. Clara's hands stilled. Eleanor found me crying in the park one day when I was 17. I'd just been kicked out of my third foster home, had nowhere to go. She brought me here, taught me that beauty could grow from broken things. The weight of Clara's words hit Julian like a physical blow. While he'd been in boarding schools and European universities, living off his trust fund and taking his grandmother's love for granted, Clara had been alone, learning the same lessons about beauty and resilience that Eleanor had tried to teach him. Jay, you look like you're somewhere else entirely. Sorry, I was just thinking about my grandmother again. Julian forced himself to focus. You mentioned yesterday that the shop faces some challenges. Clara laughed, but there was no humor in it. Challenges is putting it mildly. The whole neighborhood is changing. Rent keeps going up, property taxes have tripled in 5 years, and now there are rumors about some big development company buying up the whole block. Julian's coffee turned to acid in his stomach. What kind of development? The usual. Tear down everything with character, put up glass boxes that nobody who actually lives here can afford. Clara moved to rearrange a display, her movements sharp with frustration. Eleanor always said this neighborhood had soul. That's why she chose it. But apparently soul doesn't pay property taxes. Have you considered selling? The question came out before Julian could stop it. Clara whirled around, her eyes flashing. Selling? This place is my life, Jay. It's Eleanor's legacy. You can't sell a legacy. But if the financial pressure is too much, then I'll figure it out. I always have. Clara's voice was firm, but Julian caught the slight tremor underneath. Small businesses like mine, we're fighters. We have to be. Julian wanted to tell her right then that she wouldn't have to fight much longer.
that he could make all her financial worries disappear with a single phone call. But the words stuck in his throat because he knew the price of that call would be everything she held dear. What if someone offered to help, as an investor, I mean? Claire's expression grew suspicious. What kind of investor? Someone who believes in preserving neighborhood character, who understands that some things are more valuable than profit margins. Investors don't think like that, Jay. They think in terms of return on investment and market rates. They see a rundown flower shop in a prime location and calculate square footage. No, if I'm going to save this place, I'll do it myself. Clara watched her turn back to her flowers, her chin set with determination that both impressed and terrified him. Because in 6 weeks, his construction crews would begin demolition of this entire block. And Clara had no idea that her new friend Jay was the man who would destroy everything she loved.
Mr. Davenport, the eviction notices for the Lakefield properties have been prepared, Margaret announced, placing a thick manila folder on Julian's desk. Legal says we can serve them tomorrow morning. Julian stared at the folder without touching it. Inside were 37 notices that would displace dozens of families and business owners, including Clara. Sir, should I proceed with delivery? Not yet. Julian's voice was hoarse. I need more time to review the documentation. Margaret frowned. Julian Davenport was many things, but indecisive had never been one of them. Sir, the construction timeline? I know the timeline, Margaret. After she left, Julian opened the folder with trembling hands. Clara's notice was on top. Bloom and Quill, 30 days to vacate premises for development of Nexus Tower. The legal language felt like a betrayal written in his own hand. His phone buzzed with a text from Clara. Jay, can you come by this afternoon? I have something special to show you. Julian closed his eyes. He should cancel their arrangement, should tell her the truth immediately. Instead, he found himself typing back, I'll be there in an hour. When he arrived at the shop, Clara was practically glowing with excitement. Close your eyes, she instructed, leading him toward the back room he'd never seen. Clara, what are you... Trust me. Just close them. Julian allowed himself to be guided through a doorway. The space smelled like his grandmother's garden, rich earth, blooming roses, and that distinctive eucalyptus scent that always meant home. Okay, open them. Julian's breath caught. The back room had been transformed into a greenhouse paradise. Sunlight streamed through skylights onto carefully arranged rows of seedlings and flowering plants. But what stopped his heart was the corner dedicated to his grandmother's memory. A small shrine with Eleanor's photograph surrounded by the white roses she'd loved most. I've been working on this for months. It's going to be the Eleanor Davenport Memorial Garden, a place where people can come to remember loved ones, maybe even hold small ceremonies among the flowers. Julian walked slowly to Eleanor's photograph. She smiled back at him from behind the glass, holding a bouquet of white roses in the same spot where Clara now stood. The city gave me a grant to develop it as a community space. It'll be the first memorial garden in the historic district. Eleanor would have loved knowing her legacy was helping people heal. Julian's hands shook as he touched the frame. How long did this take you? About 6 months of planning, 2 months of actual work. I've been here every night until almost midnight, but it's worth it. This is Eleanor's true legacy, not just beautiful flowers, but healing spaces. Julian turned to Clara, seeing her surrounded by his grandmother's beloved plants, her face radiant with purpose and love for a woman who had shaped them both. The weight of what he was about to destroy pressed down on him like a physical force. Clara, I need to tell you something. What is it? You look terrible. Julian opened his mouth, but the words wouldn't come. How could he tell her? that in 30 days, bulldozers would turn Eleanor's memorial garden into rubble, that her months of loving work would become the foundation for his glass tower. I think it's beautiful. Eleanor would be proud. The lie tasted like ash in his mouth.
Breaking news this morning from downtown Chicago, where dozens of small businesses in the historic Lakefield district received eviction notices today. Clara's hands trembled as she stared at the television in her shop's break room. The morning news anchor continued over footage of confused business owners examining official documents. The notices, served by Nexus Dynamics Corporation, give property owners 30 days to vacate for the construction of a new luxury development anchored by the 40-story Nexus Tower. Clara's notice lay on the table beside her untouched coffee, the legal language swimming before her eyes. Failure to vacate by the specified date will result in forced removal and legal action. The bell chimed as someone entered the shop. Clara quickly turned off the television and emerged from the back room, expecting to see a customer. Instead, she found Julian, Jay, standing by the door, his face ashen. "Did you see the news?" she asked without preamble. Clara, 30 days, Jay. 30 days to pack up 40 years of history." Her voice broke. "Eleanor's memorial garden, the community space I've been building, all of it, gone." Julian's hands clenched at his sides. "There has to be something you can do. Lawyers, appeals." "With what money?" Clara laughed bitterly. "Do you know what fighting Nexus Dynamics would cost? They're one of the biggest tech companies in the country. Their legal budget for one day probably exceeds my annual revenue." She walked to Eleanor's memorial corner, touching the framed photograph gently. "I researched them after I got the notice. Nexus Dynamics, run by some billionaire named Julian Davenport. Apparently he's known for buying up historic neighborhoods and turning them into soulless corporate campuses." Julian flinched as if she'd struck him. "Maybe he's not as heartless as the media makes him seem." "Oh, really? This Julian Davenport person is about to destroy dozens of family businesses, displace hundreds of residents, and erase 40 years of community history? Also, he can build another glass monument to his own ego? That sounds pretty heartless to me." "You don't know his story. Maybe there are factors you're not considering." "Are you seriously defending him right now?" "I'm just saying that maybe there's more complexity to the situation than—" "Complexity?" Clara's voice rose. "Jay, this man is destroying my life's work. There's no complexity here. There's just greed versus community, power versus vulnerability. And guess who wins?" Julian opened his mouth, then closed it again. The words he needed to say, the truth about who he was, about his grandmother, about the impossible situation he'd created, stuck in his throat like shards of glass. "I should go," he said quietly. "Yeah, maybe you should. I have to figure out how to pack up 40 years of memories in 30 days. Julian paused at the door. "Clara, what if I told you there might be a way to save the shop?" She didn't turn around. "I'd say you watch too many movies, Jay. In real life, the little guys don't win against billionaires. We just get bulldozed." Julian left without another word, the bell's cheerful chime mocking the devastation he'd left behind. Outside, he pulled out his phone and dialed Margaret. "Cancel the construction permits," he said when she answered. "Sir?" "Cancel everything, the whole project. I need time to think."
"Mr. Davenport, I need to speak with you immediately." Julian looked up from his laptop to find Margaret standing in his office doorway, her usually composed expression replaced by barely contained panic. "What is it, Margaret?" "The board has called an emergency meeting. They're concerned about your recent decisions regarding the Lakefield project." Julian's stomach tightened. "What decisions?" "The indefinite construction delay, sir. The board received word that you've frozen all permits and halted demolition proceedings. They want answers." 20 minutes later, Julian sat at the head of the mahogany conference table, facing 12 expectant board members. His father, Charles Davenport, sat at the opposite end, his expression stone cold. "Julian," his father began, his voice carrying the authority that had built the Davenport fortune, "explain to us why you've jeopardized a billion-dollar development project." "I'm reassessing the community impact," Julian replied carefully. Board member Harrison Webb leaned forward. "Community impact? Julian, we have invested 18 months and $30 million in this project. The investors are expecting groundbreaking next month. Maybe we need to consider alternative approaches to development, more sustainable, community-focused." "Community-focused?" His father's voice rose. "Julian, you're a businessman, not a social worker. Since when do you care about flower shops and corner stores?" Julian's hands clenched under the table. "Since I realized that some things have value beyond profit margins." "This is about a woman, isn't it?" Charles stood, pacing to the window overlooking the Chicago skyline. "Margaret mentioned you've been spending time in the Lakefield district. Is this some midlife crisis, son?" "It's not a midlife crisis. It's a realization that maybe we've been approaching development wrong. Maybe preserving community character actually adds long-term value." "Enough." Charles turned back to face the table. "Julian, you have 48 hours to resume normal operations on the Lakefield project, or the board will vote on your removal as CEO." Julian stood slowly. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm protecting this company from your temporary insanity. Whatever romantic notions you've developed about preserving the past, they end now. Progress doesn't wait for sentimentality." "And if I refuse?" "Then you'll learn what it feels like to lose everything you've built, just like those small business owners you're suddenly so concerned about." Julian walked out of the conference room with his father's ultimatum ringing in his ears. In his office, he sat in his leather chair and stared at the architectural renderings of Nexus Tower still pinned to his wall, the sleek glass monument that would bear his name, built on the graves of community dreams. His phone buzzed with a text from Clara. "Jay, I'm sorry about this morning. I was upset and took it out on you. Want to grab coffee tomorrow? I could use a friend right now." Julian stared at the message, his heart breaking. Tomorrow, he would have to choose: save his company and destroy Clara's world, or save Clara's world and lose everything he'd spent his life building. His phone rang. Margaret's voice was urgent. "Sir, there's a reporter here asking about your connection to the Lakefield properties. Should I—" "Send them away, Margaret, and cancel all my appointments for tomorrow." "All of them, sir?" "I have something more important to do."
Good morning, Clara. Julian stood outside Bloom & Quill at 8 a.m., 2 coffee cups in his hands, and 47 hours left before his board meeting. Clara opened the door, her eyes red-rimmed from a sleepless night. "Jay, I thought you might not come after yesterday." "I brought coffee, and I have something to tell you." Julian's voice was steady, but his hands trembled slightly. "Something I should have told you weeks ago." Clara led him to the back room, past Eleanor's memorial garden that would be destroyed in 28 days. They sat among the seedlings and blooming plants that represented months of loving work. "Clara, my name isn't Jay. It's Julian. Julian Davenport." Clara's coffee cup slipped from her hands, shattering against the floor. "What?" "I'm the CEO of Nexus Dynamics. I'm the man who signed your eviction notice." "You're lying!" Julian pulled out his wallet and handed her his driver's license. Clara stared at the name, then at his face, recognition dawning like a horrible sunrise. "You've been lying to me for weeks." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Yes." "Everything? Your job? Your name?" "No." Julian leaned forward urgently. "Eleanor was my grandmother. She was Eleanor Davenport, and she was everything to me." Clara stood abruptly, backing away from him. "Eleanor Davenport, the woman who left me this shop, the woman who taught me everything, was your grandmother?" "She talked about you all the time in her letters. The young woman who understood flowers the way she did. She loved you like a granddaughter." "And you're going to destroy everything she built?"
Julian ran his hands through his hair. I didn't know. When I started this project, I had no idea you existed or that this was her shop. The connection to her, meeting you, it was completely unexpected. But you knew for weeks. You've known since I showed you her memorial garden, and you said nothing. Clara's voice turned cold. You let me fall for you while planning to destroy my life. I fell for you too. Julian stood, desperate. Clara, everything between us was real. The feelings, the connection. The connection? Clara laughed bitterly. You mean the connection where you lied about your name, your job, and your intentions? Where you pretended to care about flowers while planning to bulldoze them? I do care about flowers. You taught me to see beauty I never noticed before. Stop. Clara held up her hand. Just stop talking. She walked to Eleanor's photograph and touched the frame gently. She trusted you. As her grandson, she trusted you to honor what she built. Instead, you're going to turn her memorial garden into a parking garage. Clara, I can fix this. How? She whirled around, tears streaming down her face. How can you fix this? Your company has already spent millions. Your investors are expecting returns. Your board would never let you cancel $1 billion project for a flower shop. Julian's jaw tightened. You don't understand. I have more power than you think. Power? Clara laughed through her tears. If you had real power, you would have told me the truth weeks ago. If you had real power, you would have protected Eleanor's legacy instead of destroying it. She walked to the front door and held it open. Get out, Julian, and don't ever come back. Julian paused at the threshold. Clara, I love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of me, the small-town girl who made you feel human, but you never loved me enough to be honest with me. Julian left, the door's chime marking the end of everything beautiful in his world.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you for gathering on such short notice. Julian stood at the head of the conference table, facing 12 expectant faces. Behind him, a projection screen displayed architectural renderings of Nexus Tower, 40 stories of glass and steel that would bear his name. Julian, his father began, I trust you've come to your senses about the Lakefield delay. Actually, I have. Julian clicked a button on his remote, and the screen changed to display financial projections. I'm here to propose something revolutionary. Board member Harrison Webb leaned forward. Revolutionary how? I'm proposing we cancel the Nexus Tower project entirely. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. His father's face turned scarlet. Have you lost your mind? Charles Davenport stood abruptly. We've invested $30 million. And I'm proposing we invest $30 million more. Not in a tower that will displace hundreds of families and destroy historic businesses, but in something unprecedented. The Lakefield Heritage District. Julian clicked to the next slide, revealing new architectural plans. Instead of demolition, we renovate and preserve every existing building. We create affordable housing units above historic storefronts. We establish the Eleanor Davenport Memorial Foundation to support local businesses and community arts programs. This is financial suicide, Webb protested. The return on investment will be enormous, just measured differently. Corporate social responsibility isn't just good PR anymore, it's good business. Companies with strong CSR profiles outperform the market by 4.8% annually. Our stock price would soar with this kind of positive publicity. Board member Sarah Chen spoke up. Julian, the numbers are interesting, but our investors expect the luxury development we promised. Our investors expect profits. This delivers them. He clicked to reveal a comprehensive financial analysis he'd spent the night preparing. Historic preservation tax credits offset 20% of our costs. Community-focused development attracts premium tenants who stay longer, reducing vacancy rates.
We position Nexus Dynamics as an industry leader in sustainable, community-centered development. His father's voice was ice-cold. This is about that flower shop owner, isn't it? Julian met his father's eyes steadily. This is about Eleanor, my grandmother, your mother-in-law, the woman who taught me that some things have value beyond profit margins. The room fell silent. Charles Davenport had rarely spoken about his wife's mother, who'd always disapproved of his ruthless business practices. Eleanor left her flower shop to a young woman named Clara Rivera, a woman who spent years building a community memorial garden in Eleanor's honor, a woman who treats every customer like family and believes beauty can heal broken hearts. Julian's voice grew stronger. Eleanor was ashamed of what this family had become, our wealth built on other people's losses, our success measured in how many communities we could bulldoze. She left her most precious possession to someone who embodied the values we'd forgotten. The board exchanged uncertain glances. I'm not asking you to vote on sentiment. I'm asking you to vote on the future of this company. We can be the firm that destroys communities for profit, or we can be the firm that proves sustainable development is better business. Julian clicked off the presentation. You have 24 hours to decide. If you vote against this proposal, you'll have my resignation letter by morning. He walked out, leaving the board in stunned silence, and his future, and Clara's, hanging in the balance.
The board has reached a decision. Margaret's voice was carefully neutral as she delivered the news to Julian's office at 7 a.m., exactly 24 hours after his ultimatum. Julian looked up from his laptop, where he'd been drafting his resignation letter. And they voted 8-4 in favor of your Heritage District proposal. Julian's coffee cup slipped from his hands, crashing to the floor. What? Your father was not pleased. He and 3 other board members voted against the proposal, but Sarah Chen and Harrison Webb rallied the majority. They're calling it the Eleanor Davenport Heritage Initiative. Julian stared at Margaret in disbelief. They approved it? More than that, sir. They've allocated an additional $50 million for the project and want to fast-track the historic preservation applications. Sarah Chen said, and I quote, "This is the kind of visionary leadership that will define Nexus Dynamics for the next century." Julian sank back in his chair, overwhelmed. He'd won. Clara's shop was saved. Eleanor's memorial garden would survive. But the victory felt hollow without Clara there to share it. There's more, sir. The Chicago Tribune wants to do a feature story on the Heritage Project. They're calling you the CEO who chose community over profit. The interview is scheduled for this afternoon. Cancel it. Sir? I said cancel it. I need to go somewhere first. An hour later, Julian stood outside Bloom & Quill, watching through the window as Clara mechanically packed her grandmother's, his grandmother's, belongings into boxes. The sight of Eleanor's treasures being wrapped in newspaper and stored away broke something inside him. The door was locked, but he knocked anyway. Clara looked up, her eyes red from crying, and shook her head without approaching the door. Julian pulled out his phone and called her. "Don't hang up," he said when she answered. "Please." "I have nothing to say to you, Julian." "Then listen. The board voted. The Heritage District proposal passed. Your shop is saved. Nexus Dynamics is canceling the tower project. We're preserving the entire Lakefield district. Your memorial garden, your shop, everything stays exactly as it is." Through the window, Julian watched Clara sink into a chair, the phone still pressed to her ear. "Why?" she whispered. "Because you were right. About Eleanor, about community, about what really matters." Julian's voice broke.
Because I love you more than I love being right, more than I love success, more than I love anything. Clara was crying now, her shoulders shaking as she held the phone. Clara, please open the door. I can't. Why? Because if I open that door, I'll forgive you, and I'm not ready to forgive you yet. Julian pressed his palm against the glass, wishing he could touch her face, wipe away her tears. Then I'll wait. For how long? However long it takes. Clara stood and walked to the door, her hand hovering over the lock. Through the glass, their eyes met. Two broken people trying to find their way back to each other. Julian? Yeah? Thank you for saving Eleanor's garden. Thank you for teaching me what was worth saving.
6 months later. Careful with that orchid arrangement, Miguel. It's for the Heritage District grand opening. Clara directed the bustling activity inside Blumenquill as the entire Lakefield neighborhood prepared for the celebration. The shop had been transformed, expanded into the adjacent space, with Eleanor's memorial garden now a centerpiece visible through large glass windows. The bell chimed, and Julian entered carrying 2 coffee cups and a nervous expression. "Morning," he said softly, setting her usual order on the counter. "Morning." Clara's smile was warm, but careful. They'd been rebuilding their relationship slowly, with coffee meetings and honest conversations replacing the lies of their early encounters. "How are the preparations going?" "Chaotic and perfect." Clara gestured around the bustling shop. "Eleanor would have loved this. The whole community coming together to celebrate what we've preserved rather than what we've lost." Julian watched her move gracefully between customers and arrangements, her joy infectious. Over the past months, he learned to love her all over again, this time without deception, seeing her strength, her forgiveness, her capacity for building beauty from broken things. "Clara," Julian said when the morning rush subsided, "I have something for you." He handed her a small velvet box. Clara's breath caught. "Julian, what?" "It's not what you think. Open it." Inside lay Eleanor's wedding ring, a simple gold band with a small diamond surrounded by tiny emeralds. "I found it in my grandmother's jewelry box. She left specific instructions that it should go to the woman who truly understood her legacy." Julian's voice was gentle. "That's you, Clara. It was always you." Clara's eyes filled with tears as she lifted the delicate ring. "It's beautiful." "There's something else." Julian took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about legacy lately, about what Eleanor really wanted. She didn't just want her garden preserved, she wanted it to grow." "What do you mean?" "I mean, the Eleanor Davenport Foundation is opening heritage districts in 12 cities across the country. Small businesses supported, communities preserved, beautiful spaces protected." Julian's eyes met hers. "I want you to lead it." Clara stared at him. "What lead?" "The foundation. Travel to communities like this one, help them fight for their heritage, teach them what you've taught me about the value of things that can't be measured in profit margins." "You want me to leave the shop?" "I want you to expand it. Blumenquill branches in every heritage district. Your grandmother's, our grandmother's, vision of healing through beauty spreading across the country." Clara looked around her beloved shop, then back at Julian. "What about us?" Julian stepped closer, his hand gently touching her face. "Us means I go wherever you go. Us means building something together that honors both our dreams." "Are you proposing a business partnership or something else?" Julian smiled, the first completely honest smile she'd seen from him. "Both, if you'll have me." Clara kissed him then,
soft and sweet, surrounded by the flowers Eleanor had loved and the community they'd saved together. Yes, she whispered against his lips, to all of it. Outside, the Heritage District celebration was beginning, but inside Blumenquill, two hearts that had found their way back to each other were writing their own happy ending.
I hope you enjoyed this story. Please tell us how you rate it from 0 to 10. Hey, subscribe to be notified when we release new stories. Click the like button and share with anyone you think might also like it. See you next time.